Summer's officially here, and the bikini sale at shackshop.us is happening right now. Get hot styles, bold prints, and perfect fits, all on sale for a limited time. Whether you're beach-bound or poolside, we've got the bikini that makes you feel confident, cute, and totally summer-ready. So don't wait. Head to shackshop.us and shop the sale before it ends. That's shackshop.us, your new favorite bikini spot.
Russia calls for restraint as U.S. deploys second aircraft carrier to the Middle East amid mounting Iran tensions. Global tensions are rising once again in the Middle East as Russia publicly urged Iran and all regional actors to avoid escalation, even as the United States dramatically expands its military footprint in the region. The Kremlin's message comes at a critical moment. Two American aircraft carrier strike groups are now converging near some of the world's most volatile waterways, while negotiations over Iran's nuclear program teeter between cautious optimism and strategic deadlock. The situation represents more than a temporary diplomatic flare-up. It is a convergence of military power projection, nuclear diplomacy, energy security concerns, and great power rivalry. At the center of the unfolding crisis are three capitals: Washington, Tehran, and Moscow, each calculating risks, leverage, and long-term strategic positioning. Kremlin message: de-escalation over confrontation. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov delivered Moscow's position in carefully measured language. He emphasized that Russia continues to build bilateral relations with Iran while simultaneously encouraging restraint. Moscow's appeal was directed not only at Tehran, but broadly at all parties in the region, signaling that Russia views the unfolding tensions as a multilateral risk rather than a strictly U.S.-Iran standoff. The Kremlin underscored the importance of political and diplomatic channels, warning that the current trajectory risks pushing the region toward an unpredictable flashpoint. Russia's public messaging reveals several key strategic goals: prevent a large-scale regional war that could destabilize energy markets and undermine Russian economic interests, preserve its growing strategic partnership with Iran, particularly in defense cooperation and energy coordination, avoid direct confrontation with the United States while subtly positioning itself as a stabilizing diplomatic actor. Peskov described the current climate as an unprecedented escalation, but he stressed that negotiations should remain the primary tool for resolving disputes. This balancing act reflects Moscow's broader foreign policy doctrine: leverage tension for influence without triggering uncontrollable conflict. The USS Gerald R. a floating symbol of power. The immediate catalyst for Russia's statement was the movement of the USS Gerald R. the largest aircraft carrier ever built, toward the Middle East. Departing from operations in the Atlantic and Caribbean, the Ford Carrier Strike Group is repositioning to join the USS Abraham Lincoln, which arrived in the region earlier. The deployment means the United States will soon have two carrier strike groups operating simultaneously in proximity to Iran, a powerful and highly visible show of force. The USS Gerald R. is not just another aircraft carrier. It represents the newest generation of American naval technology, featuring advanced electromagnetic aircraft launch systems, upgraded radar capabilities, and the capacity to deploy dozens of fighter jets, surveillance aircraft, and electronic warfare platforms. It serves as both a military instrument and a strategic message. Aircraft carriers function as mobile sovereign territories. They project power without requiring foreign bases, and their presence signals readiness without necessarily crossing into active combat. By positioning two carriers in the same theater, Washington is communicating multiple messages: deterrence against potential Iran escalation, assurance to regional allies concerned about Iran military activity, strategic pressure during nuclear negotiations. USS Abraham Lincoln, reinforcement already in place. The USS Abraham Lincoln and accompanying guided missile destroyers arrived in the region weeks earlier. Together, the strike groups form a layered defensive and offensive posture that includes carrier-based fighter squadrons, cruise missile-equipped destroyers, advanced missile defense systems, submarine support elements, intelligence and reconnaissance assets. The dual carrier configuration significantly expands U.S. operational capacity in the Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea, and potentially the Eastern Mediterranean. This buildup is occurring against a backdrop of rising tensions related to Iran's nuclear enrichment activities, ballistic missile testing, and its support for proxy groups across the region. Nuclear negotiations, progress and friction. Diplomatic talks between Washington and Tehran have advanced cautiously. Iran Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described recent discussions as achieving agreement on guiding principles and initiating drafting procedures for a possible framework. However, beneath the formal optimism lie deep disagreements. The United States has publicly maintained that any agreement must include full dismantlement of Iran's nuclear enrichment capability, strict verification mechanisms, constraints on ballistic missile development, cessation of support for armed proxy groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. Iran, for its part, has historically resisted total dismantlement,
insisting that enrichment for civilian energy purposes remains its sovereign right. This core dispute, enrichment versus elimination, remains the central fault line. Iran's strategic calculus. Tehran faces a delicate balancing act. On one side, economic sanctions continue to strain domestic stability. On the other, the regime views nuclear capability, even short of weaponization, as a deterrent shield against external threats. Iran's military doctrine relies heavily on asymmetric warfare, proxy networks, and regional influence. Its leadership calculates that demonstrating resilience against U.S. pressure enhances its strategic positioning. Recent actions, including live-fire missile exercises in the Strait of Hormuz, serve both as deterrence and negotiation leverage. The Strait of Hormuz remains one of the world's most critical energy choke points. Roughly 1/5 of global oil shipments transit this narrow waterway. Any disruption would have immediate global economic consequences. Russia's broader Middle East strategy. Russia's involvement in Middle East geopolitics has deepened significantly over the past decade. Its intervention in Syria solidified its military presence in the eastern Mediterranean. Its energy diplomacy extends through OPEC+ cooperation frameworks. Its arms sales and defense partnerships include Iran and other regional players. Moscow's appeal for restraint is not altruistic. It reflects tangible strategic interests, avoiding oil price shocks that could destabilize markets, maintaining leverage over both Iran and Western powers, preventing an expanded U.S. military footprint from solidifying long-term dominance. Russia also views U.S. carrier deployments as signals that Washington intends to maintain robust forward military positioning despite domestic political shifts. The risk of miscalculation. Military buildups inherently increase the risk of unintended confrontation. With multiple naval fleets operating in confined maritime spaces, risks include accidental encounters between vessels, drone or missile misidentification, proxy group actions escalating into state-level responses, cyber operations triggering retaliatory measures. History demonstrates how quickly naval incidents can spiral. Even minor engagements can create cascading escalation pressures when national prestige and deterrence credibility are at stake.
Energy markets on edge. Energy traders are watching closely. Even absent direct conflict, tension premiums can drive oil price volatility. Insurance costs for shipping through the Strait of Hormuz can spike within hours of military escalation signals. A sustained standoff involving 2 U.S. carriers and Iranian missile drills could increase oil prices, raise global shipping costs, impact inflation metrics worldwide, shift currency valuations. Russia, as a major energy exporter, stands to benefit from higher prices, but not from systemic instability that undermines demand. Regional actors, watching and preparing. Several regional governments are carefully observing the situation. Gulf Arab states are concerned about potential spillover. Israel monitors Iranian nuclear progress closely. Turkey balances NATO commitments with regional interests. European nations emphasize diplomatic continuity. Each actor calculates risk differently, but all share a preference for avoiding open war. Domestic political dimensions. In Washington, military deployments intersect with domestic political narratives around strength, deterrence, and global leadership. In Tehran, negotiations must not appear as capitulation. In Moscow, positioning as a mediator enhances Russia's diplomatic stature. Each leadership faces internal audiences that constrain flexibility. Diplomatic pathways forward. The most plausible short-term outcome is continued negotiation under military shadow. Dual carrier presence can serve as coercive leverage rather than prelude to immediate action. If talks produce a framework agreement, naval deployments may gradually scale back. If talks collapse, however, military signaling could intensify further. Historical context, echoes of past standoffs. The current environment echoes prior flashpoints. The 2019 tanker attacks in the Gulf. The U.S. withdrawal from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. The killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Iranian retaliatory missile strikes. Each episode demonstrated how rapidly escalation ladders can rise. What comes next? Several scenarios remain possible. Diplomatic breakthrough. Draft framework evolves into interim agreement. Prolonged standoff. Military presence sustained without combat. Proxy escalation. Indirect clashes intensify. Direct confrontation, triggered by incident or miscalculation. At present, diplomatic channels remain open. Russia's call for restraint underscores an international consensus, even among rivals, that open war would carry unacceptable consequences. Conclusion: a region holding its breath. The convergence of 2 U.S. aircraft carriers near Iranian waters is a rare and deliberate strategic signal. Russia's appeal for caution reflects recognition that miscalculation could trigger broader instability. The coming weeks will determine whether military power projection reinforces diplomacy or undermines it. For now, negotiations continue under the shadow of warships. The world watches as 3 powers test the balance between deterrence and diplomacy in one of the most strategically sensitive regions on Earth.